Temet Nosce, the oldest, most fundamental personal development words. It's one of the Delphic Maxims, one of the organizing themes of Socrates Dialogues, and also the theme of most of the videos on this channel. Yet today I read this article that I also put in the description called Know Thyself. It's not just silly advice, it's actively dangerous. By a guy named Bence Nanay, a philosophy professor at the University of Antwerp and senior research associate at the University of Cambridge. After I explain his argument as succinct and as good as I currently can, I will explain what assumptions of his I would challenge and why I think his argument is valid, and that Temet Nosce, know thyself, recognize thyself, at least can be truly disastrous, yet only if you work with the same assumptions as his assumptions and have the same understanding of what the advice know thyself is referring to. He says, we have a fairly stable idea about what kind of people we are, and much of what we do because it's consistent with how we know ourselves to be or not to be. We have a bias towards dismissing the possibility that we might change. Yet we, and specifically our preferences and values, do change. And therefore we spend much of our time doing things not aligned with our preferences and values, or what we like. And we hide that contradictions of our action and what we like, which then creates cognitive dissonance, which takes away energy that we need to have the willpower to live a good day. He ends his article with saying you might be able to know what you think of yourself in this moment, but what you think of yourself is very different from who you are and what you actually like. And in a couple of days or weeks, all of this might change anyway. Knowing thyself is an obstacle to acknowledging and making peace with constantly changing values. If you know thyself to be such and such a kind of person, this limits your freedom considerably. You might have been the one who chose to be an espresso person or donating to charity person, but once these features are built into your self-image, you have very little say in what direction your life is going. Any change would be either censored or lead to a cognitive dissonance. And he ends with Andre Gilde's quote from Autumn Leaves: "A caterpillar who seeks to know himself would never become a butterfly." Beautiful quote, yet a little wrong. If you feel like I misrepresented anything, please put it in the comments. I want to only ever steelman, never strawman others. I agree with almost everything. I do even agree that know thyself can be dangerous advice, if understood in the way Bence Nanay did it. Yet, it can also be great advice, if you follow it deeper than he assumes people do. Yet I do admit most people that just hear know thyself, never fully practice it, just assume they already know themselves, which creates the problem described in this article. The most difficult thing in life is to know yourself. Thales. They haven't explored their own logical fallacies, biases, and may even still fall victim to the end of history illusion. They never pondered their own ever-changing nature, and therefore think they will be the same in 5 years. This already shows that even on the understanding of the self in which we think the self is just the role we play, including our preferences and values, it's good to actually get to know that self. See how it changes over time, I even use my natural bias to want to be consistent with the role I define myself as in order to make disciplined actions easier, because I consciously elude myself that that's who I am, a person who does these kinds of things. It's the level of knowing your concept, the idea of you. And just because it's a concept or idea, it still is real. Like grandfather's axe, which handle was replaced 3 times and the head 2 times, yet it's still grandfather's axe. Everything changed, except the idea, the concept of grandfather's axe. Part of that idea is actually your social role, your name, your story, your tastes, your beliefs, your traits, how you act, how others see you, your limits, and what you're good and bad at. But the truth is, if you go deeper into the advice of Temet Nosce, you realize it means not just knowing thyself, but also means in order to know thyself, you have to recognize thyself, which is the other possible translation for the old phrase Temet Nosce. Although knowing originally meant becoming intimate with. So you start becoming really intimate with yourself, loving yourself, so much you lose yourself in yourself and start birthing your true self. You then let go of the personality, which derives from Latin personalitas, which is mask, and get to know what's the difference between your personality and who you really are, really want, and your true reasons to do what you do and want what you want. You stop fooling yourself through things like cognitive biases and become aware of all your subparts, including your shadow. To do that, you look at yourself like a scientist, study yourself subjectively and objectively. Yet, if we dive deep into knowing ourselves, we will end up truly moving beyond ourselves, our roles, and even our concept or idea of self. Then you start letting go of the core illusion, as Einstein said. A human being is a part of the whole called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings, as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. The striving to free oneself from this delusion is the one issue of true religion. Not to nourish the delusion, but to try to overcome it is the way to reach the attainable measure of peace of mind. As you can see, in the end, it's true. To truly know thyself, you have to forget, transcend, and liberate yourself from yourself. And you will become the butterfly.